Bright Duty. Every student matters.
Hello students, once again I am here with chapter number 11, US dominance in world politics. And all about this chapter is growth of unilateralism and emergence of Taliban in Afghanistan, terrorist attacks 11 September 2001, 9 by 11, and US response to 9 by 11 and global war on terrorism. The Iraq invasion, the US dominance and a challenge to US economy and ideology, India's relations with USA. A new world order emerged after the disintegration of Soviet Union in December 1991. What happened was the US dominance in world politics. The United States was now in a position to direct and control world politics in a manner it had not happened before. Growth of unilateralism. It is interesting to look how international politics was dominated by a single power over the years. What is meant by unilateralism? It is used to refer a situation in which one country is in position to take a decision or action on its own. That means unit means one, single, without the agreement of other countries involved. In other words, unilateralism means the dominance of a single power, and the post Cold War period resulted in a unipolar world. There remained only a single center of power in the world. President George Bush said the United States leads to United Nations and middle-sized powers to stop aggressors. So according to him, all other nations fall into the category of middle-sized powers, whereas USA is a superpower. With the disintegration of Soviet Union, international politics began to be dominated by the United States for a very long period, and it was the only state with a massive military power and the political influence abroad. And it therefore assumed a leadership role in the world. US supremacy seemed secured and unchallenged. Strategically, the US was now the only nation which had overwide interest and presence. As you all know, after the Cold War and the disintegration of Soviet Russia, the time had come when most of the countries were involving themselves in the capitalist and the democratic regime. So most of the countries were in favor of US, and gradually US was the superpower because it was already into capitalism and democracy, and this was benefiting the country and it was becoming the superpower. The US role in the world. The only global superpower was USA. Since the end of the Cold War, the global system has been unipolar, and US has been world's only superpower economically, militarily, and culturally. An economic superpower, the US is the world's richest nation with the world's largest economy and ranks first in total GDP, 20% of the world GDP. World's top 10 economies are here. Shares of world GDP as well. A military superpower, the US is the world's most powerful nation and strongest military the world has ever known, both in absolute terms and relative to both other nations. And we will talk about all these things in details later in the slides. US defense spending almost equals the defense spending of all other nations combined. And China, and this is US, and budget, and this is the comparison between two. Only the US has a global military presence with far more forces stationed overseas than any other nation. And US hegemony, the US is often described as a global hegemon, and meaning it is able to exert dominance and power worldwide. That means single decision maker. Pax Americana, what does it mean? The Pax Romana, a 200-year period of peace and stability imposed on the world of Romans at the height of Roman Empire. And Pax Americana, policing the world, US helps fight terrorists. US is the newest global corps inside the Pentagon's new plan to police the world's most dangerous place. What makes America a cultural superpower? And these are the some examples. Let's talk about the first Gulf War. The Gulf War was a war waged by coalition forces from 35 nations led by United States against Iraq in response to Iraq's invasion and annexation of Kuwait arising from one pricing and production disputes. And the dates were January 1991 from 28 February 1991. And location was Iraq, Persian Gulf, and also known as Arabian Gulf, and Kuwait, Israel, South Arabia. The first Gulf War was from 90 to 91. August to 2nd, 1990, Iraq invaded Kuwait and took possession of that country. Causes of the First World War was Iraq claimed Kuwait in the southernmost province, and in Iraq's president Saddam Hussein did not recognize Kuwait's independence from Britain that ruled it in the past. He considered Kuwait to be province of Iraq, accused Kuwait of selling oil in excess of its quota. Iraq incurred huge damage as a result of its lengthy war with Iran. And 1980 to 88, it decided to improve its finances by selling the crude oil in large quantities. An Iraqi president accused Kuwait of selling oil in excess of the quota fixed by OPEC, that is Organization of Petroleum Exporting Countries, and thereby lowering the price oil in the world market. Position of leadership in Arab world. Saddam Hussein wanted to assume a position of leadership in the Arab world, and he felt threatened by powers such as Iran, Israel, and USA. Islamic fundamentalism. Iran's ruler had denounced America as an enemy of Islam. To encounter Islamic fundamentalism in Iraq, America and poured billions of dollars into Iraq. There were also extensive supplies of arms to Iraq, and Saddam Hussein looked at neighboring countries rather hotly, and that also became a cause of Iraqi invasion of Kuwait. Accused Kuwait of stealing Iraqi oil in July 1990, Iraqi government accused Kuwait of stealing Iraqi oil, and Hussein demanded that Kuwait pay damages of $14 billion to Iraq, and the ruler of Kuwait refused to agree to Iraq's demands. Then the Iraqi invasion occurred. The whole world was surprised when Iraqi invaded Kuwait on 2nd August 1990, and Iraq defeated and occupied Kuwait in just 6 hours and declared it to be the 19th province of Iraq. And Saudi Arabia was also feared to be attacked by Iraqi troops. And therefore, at the request of the Saudi government, USA dispatched its forces by 7th August to defend Saudi Arabia, and this was called Operation Desert Shield. Now, Operation Desert Storm. This was the war in the Middle East, and with the U.S. President George Bush taking a leading role, the United Nations Security Council passed a resolution calling for the immediate withdrawal of Iraqi forces from Kuwait. And United States, the other Western powers, and some Arab nations started deploying their troops and aircrafts in Saudi Arabia so that they were ready for immediate action. And the coalition forces numbered a total of 660,000 troops from some 34 countries, and the Security Council authorized the use of military force. And if Iraq failed to withdraw her troops from Kuwait by 15 January 1991, Iraq's failure to do so, and it resulted in massive air strikes from January 1991. And this military action against Iraq under an American General H. Norman Schwarzkopf came into known as Operation Desert Storm. What was the objective of this operation? The objective of this Desert Storm was to force Iraq to withdraw its troops from Kuwait. And the air attacks and the land war caused extensive damage to Iraqi roadways and railways, airports, power plants, and armed depots. And Iraqi dictator Saddam Hussein was forced to surrender to the coalition forces. And on 28 February 1991, Iraqi Forest Minister started the Iraq agreed to withdraw its forces from Kuwait and to comply fully with Security Council resolution, and thus Kuwait was liberated, and with it ended with First World War, Gulf War. And consequence the Gulf War, this war established the US hegemony and superiority in the world. And the Gulf War shattered the illusion of Arab unity. 12 out of 20 Arab countries has dispatched their troops to Saudi Arabia to fight against Iraq. And although the war ended in February 1991, the sanctions imposed on Iraq contributed for many years. And see how tensed situation it might be. And let's see what were the effects of this on Iraq hoped that the humiliating defeats would trigger rebellions with the political and military light. April United Nations Security Council Resolution 687 passed, and Saddam remained in power until 2003. This war established beyond all doubts that in the field of technology or USA had left the other nations far behind. Military experts term this as computer war because of a lot of publicity about the smart bombs and used by United States, and it was also called the video game war because people throughout the world saw television coverage on the destruction caused by coalition forces in Iraq. So more than 520 oil wells were set ablaze, burning fiercely. Germany, Japan, and Saudi Arabia contributed substantial monetary resources to the conduct of war, and therefore some press reporters commented that USA profited from the war. Let's revise few questions. The attack on the Twin Towers of the World Trade Center in New York in 2001 has been seen as a watershed event, and United States hegemony began in 1991. That is true. And correct and rewrite the statement is like in August 1990, China invaded Iran, rapidly occupying and subsequently annexing it. In August 1990, Iraq invaded Kuwait, occupying and subsequently annexing it. The match the column is Operation Desert Storm is related to UN operation. Operating Enduring Freedom related to global war. Accounts for 65% of India's exports related to USA, and Qaeda and Taliban regime of Afghanistan relate to 9 by 11 attacks. And American hegemony starts after the disintegration of Soviet Union. First Gulf War was fought against whom and how many countries took place, and 32 countries took part in that in First Gulf War, which was fought against Iraq. And when did Iraq invade Kuwait in August 1990? First Gulf War is known by what name? Operation Desert Storm. And what is meant by hegemony? Hegemony means becoming powerful or doing something for power, and it is the form of military domination, economic power, political clout, and cultural superiority. And who invaded against Iraq? A massive coalition force of 660,000 troops from 34 countries fought against Iraq, and in the coalition forces, 75% of US soldiers were against Iraq, and which war became video game First Gulf War. And what was the purpose of Operation Iraqi Freedom? The purpose of US invasion of Iraq was to control, offense, and install a regime friendly to the US.